Hello, everybody, and welcome to Highside, Lowside. This is Season 11, Episode 7. My name's Zach. I'm joined, as always, by my buddy Spurg. On this episode, we're talking about the best of 2026 in so much as what we are most excited about. We're looking back on 2025 a little bit as well. Also, a delivery robot versus a motorcycle on the streets of Los Angeles, and a breakthrough in noise canceling in helmets. All that and more coming up. But first, a word from our sponsor.
So in these Motul conversations, we talk a lot about changing your engine oil. But what about your gear oil? What if you're out there on a shaft drive motorcycle burning up the miles and you haven't checked out your gearbox lately? That final drive system, that needs some attention. Well, luckily, Motul has a full line of gear oil products to make sure that your bike is running tip-top all the time. Even if you don't have a chain, Motul's got you covered with their high-end gear oil. To learn more about how Motul can help you from grinding your gears, head over to RevZilla.com/Motul. That's RevZilla.com/MOTUL. And while you're over there on RevZilla.com, make sure you check out the Airbag Save page. RevZilla is dedicated to making sure that you are informed about all the newest safety technology coming down the pike, and the newest, most protective safety technology that we've seen in recent years is the evolution of airbag technology. So to learn about the entire line of airbag products and which one might be right for you and your ride, check out RevZilla.com/airbags. Now, on with the show.
Welcome, everybody, to Highside, Lowside. Of course, my co-host, as usual, Spurgeon Dunbar, the Highside, as he's known, and
wait, I'm pretty
Zach
sure you're the
is
high side. I'm pretty sure you're the high side at this point.
As
far as this season goes, you're the highest
sit here
side.
with my ankle propped up on a cat tree in my home office, so the blood does not pool in my foot. I suppose you're right. I am the high side. Welcome, everybody.
How you feeling? Okay, though? You doing okay? Your ankle's on a cat toy.
I could complain, but you don't want to hear that, do you?
No. I think the audience just wants to know that you're feeling better, you're on the mend, and you'll be riding a motorcycle soon.
I have just, soon enough, I suppose. I have just recently started putting weight on my foot for the first time in 2.5 months. Very exciting.
But you lost a lot of weight during this whole process, so it's probably a little bit less weight than you normally would have.
I don't know.
So it's nice.
Yeah, I lost weight initially because I was, I had like some GI problems related to the trauma and the surgery and whatever, and yeah, I did lose some weight. I do think it's coming back, though. I think it's coming back in the form of flab and not muscle. So I'm going to have some work to do once I can actually participate in cardiovascular activities. But that is a different podcast for 2026. We are here to talk about the motorcycles and stories thus far for the 2026 motorcycling season that we are most excited about. But first, as usual, Spurge, we're going to go off topic a little bit here. We have a little sort of Am I the A-hole that we had a lot of fun with in pre-pro. We're hoping you guys like it too.
So when we're talking about Am I the A-hole, typically it's like, what stupid thing has one of us done? Or, what did we see a motorcyclist doing wrong on the internet?
Right. Or some person. What has some person done that makes them an A-hole?
But I mean, everybody's talking about AI, right? So we found a video of a robot. We found a video of a robot. This is a delivery robot in what I'm presuming is probably Los Angeles.
I think so, yeah.
And it is motoring itself down the sidewalk, and it looks like a Harley-Davidson Sportster owner parked their motorcycle in the middle of a pedestrian sidewalk.
Or at least maybe not in the very middle, but on the sidewalk in the way to some extent, yes.
And the little delivery robot just motors right on through and pushes the motorcycle over. We'll do our best to have the video up on screen for those of you watching.
Right.
And the question that we have is, who is the a-hole? Is it the motorcyclist that parked their bike on the sidewalk, or is it the delivery robot that, at any cost is going to get that sushi order delivered?
I think, and I think I speak for both of us, Spurge, when I say that normally, if any thing, whether it's a person, dog, robot, whatever, that pushes over a motorcycle, you'd be like, hey man, be cooler than that. That's not something I approve of, just tipping a motorcycle over. But all the comments on that we've seen on social media and the comments on the Common Tread article that was posted in relation to this video, people seem to agree that the person who parked the motorcycle is the a-hole. And it's like, it's hard. it's hard not to be on the robot's side. It's just, it's got a box full of groceries. It's trundling down the sidewalk. It's going to someone's house to bring them an Instacart order or whatever it is. And it's something's in its way. And to be fair to the robot, it's not malicious, right? It doesn't have feelings like that. It just is going along and it bumps into the bike and it hooks the handlebar on the top of its box and it lifts the handlebar up and tips the bike over to the right side away from the kickstand. And then what I think is kind of cute and funny is that the robot backs up for a second. Like it's like, oh, whoops. Oh, my bad. And then it just keeps on going because it does not have a moral compass. But, it's a pretty interesting interaction, between a being that is, has navigation tools, but no, feelings are good or evil. And it just, did something that we would normally associate with being bad, but then all of a sudden everyone's siding with the thing being like, you go robot, you fight the good fight.
Well, so it's interesting. Some of the comments that we saw, so there's an article over on Common Tread. If you want to weigh in the comments, but I guess by the time you listen to this episode, it won't be in real time, but you can always jump back in and Lance will be there monitoring the comments as he always does. But some of the people are talking about the fact that like, what if this was old lady in a wheelchair or an old
stroller
man
with a baby in it,
or a stroller with a baby.
Sure.
And they were talking about trying to get down the sidewalk and get around the motorcycle. So the comment was like, hey man, like the person that parked the motorcycle in the middle of the sidewalk, you're inhibiting people that need to use a sidewalk and might have that's a harder time doing that.
I can't. Here's another way to frame it, Spurge. And I just to kind of put a button on this particular part of the conversation before we move on to other things. Can you imagine a scenario in which it was okay to park the motorcycle on the sidewalk? What would the scenario be that you'd be like, oh, all right, they had to park the motorcycle on the sidewalk because
I got a ticket in LA once for parking. There was like a slight hill in the road and like my bike wasn't parked with the correct wheel angle going up the hill. And I got a ticket for that. So like the fact that this person hasn't had their bike, impounded for parking on the sidewalk, I don't know. I don't think there's an excuse for it, I guess. But my question, and maybe there is someone out there that's more familiar with these delivery robots. We don't have them in, rural Pennsylvania. But like, what if like the point that someone here was making was, what if there was a woman in a wheelchair or a baby in a stroller trying to get around the motorcycle? But my question for the robot is like, does the robot have the sophistication where if there is someone coming down the sidewalk in a wheelchair, can the robot know to stop and get around pedestrians and such?
My question is sort of the inverse of that. What if it was a baby in a stroller on the sidewalk that the robot was trying to get around?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking, I guess.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying, what if it was a stroller trying to get past the motorcycle?
No, that's what people are asking.
Right,
I'm saying, what happens if it's like, does the robot know?
And then the robot tips over a stroller with a baby in it, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, take it easy, Coco. You can't do that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know. It's interesting. So I read an article in the New York Times recently about a cat in San Francisco that was run over by a Waymo, the driverless taxis. I don't know why you're laughing. It's not funny.
I'm not laughing. That's my sympathetic. I'm mourning.
Right. Yeah. So the situation was the Waymo was parked and the cat went under the car as, it like tucked itself under in the curb, on the street side of the curb, underneath the car as cats do. And then someone got in the car and the people saw it and they were like, oh no, the cat's under the car. We got to like stop the way. But like, how do you stop a driverless taxi? Yeah. And my suggestion was just stand in front of it because it's not going to run a person over. But the people were either like not convinced that would work or too scared or whatever. Either way, totally fair. And the car pulled away and ran over the cat. And you're like, well, how the heck, like, should the Waymo know that the cat was there, or should, or some people have rightly pointed out that human drivers run over animals all the time. So like robot driver does it sometimes. Like how do you stop? Does it have to be perfect in order to be technology that we embrace? Or I don't know. It's a big moral quandary.
I was laughing realistically because the Waymo thing that I've seen in the news recently with there was like an active, like police situation happening. And I don't know if it was like an active police shooter situation, but there was definitely like an active police zone going on the street, and the Waymo just like drove right through and dropped the pedestrian off in the middle of like this like police like standoff, and like the police were trying to stop it and flip out, and it was just like the Waymo just did its thing and it drove around and it dropped the person off. So there's definitely some technology kinks in the armor as far as some of this automated stuff goes. But
yes,
I guess final point here, and we're going to move on. Zach, in your opinion, who is the a-hole in this situation? Is it the Sportster owner parking on the sidewalk, or is it the lovable little delivery robot trying to drop off its payload?
Much as I would like to defend the motorcyclist, until I hear otherwise, until I hear a defensible position of why the motorcyclist had to park on the sidewalk like that, I say the Harley owner, in this case, the motorcycle owner, is the a-hole, and the robot was just trying to do its job. That's my stance. How about you?
I think this robot looks too much like Wall-E to not side with the robot. He's adorable, and he actually has like Ducati eyes, right? Like if you're looking at the
Desert X
eyes,
eyes,
yeah, like the Desert X eyes,
yeah,
right?
like
it looks
dual round headlights. Yeah.
That's how Italian robot.
That's how you find your way into Spurgeon's good graces. AI robots is you just look like a cool motorcycle, and then he'll be like,
"There you go,
I'm in."
You look like an adventure bike, and we're going to do this. Let's see how he goes through the old mud puddles of the next block that he has to get around. Anyway,
2026 motorcycle Spurgeon.
There you go.
We are going to talk about an air-cooled Harley at some point in this discussion. Buckle up, everybody. But first, we're going to start with sport bikes and sport touring bikes. And we're going to talk about some of the machines that we're excited about for 2026. The thing I want to ask you, Spurge, before I have one more caveat for the audience, but before we do that, didn't you and Lance do an EICMA? What's new at EICMA? Like just a couple months ago? What are people going to learn in this episode they didn't learn in that one? Why am I doing this when you and Lance already did it?
Lance and I had strict rules. We talked about this. You clearly didn't listen to the episodes we recorded in your absence, which is fine. You were busy with, your injuries. But we were very specific in the EICMA episode. We were only going to talk about things that were announced at EICMA. And this is more of a look back at the bikes that we really liked at 2025. And this is also looking forward to bikes that we are excited to be getting in 2026, regardless of when they were announced. So, for example, we will probably talk about something like a KLE 500 today. That is not a bike that we talked about in the EICMA episode because it was not released.
Because it was not
EICMA.
Released EICMA. Copy. Okay, I'm glad you clarified for everybody. One other thing I would like to say before we jump into the conversation, then I promise we will start, is that this is a list of 2026 news stories and motorcycles that we are excited about. It is not meant to be a comprehensive list of every single motorcycle that is new or updated in 2026. If you feel like we missed something and you're like, how could you not be excited about the XYZ 3000? Please send us an email to highside@RevZilla.com and point out our transgression. But
leave a comment on YouTube, leave a comment on Spotify, let us know. And maybe we just missed something. Right. The other thing as it relates to that is, there is news breaking, like even as we're recording it this week, we know that Harley-Davidson has an announcement coming out tomorrow. We know that Triumph has, I think 3 new motorcycles that they're announcing in the coming 3 weeks. So just keep in mind that at the time of recording, we are doing the best with the information we have right now.
We're just doing our best, people. Okay. Seriously this time. Sport touring category.
One of my favorite motorcycles of 2025, full stop, that I was the most excited about was the Triumph Tiger 800 Sport. I think this bike looks cool. I think this bike has, performance that is, going to be much livelier and sportier than what we've seen from maybe the older Trident engine. This reminds me a lot of something that's a cross between the Sprint ST 1050, the Tiger 1050. So as we're thinking about this category in 2025, that was a bike that was probably my favorite motorcycle that I saw come out last year. What does that mean for the future?
What does it mean for the future?
What are we seeing? That's one of the things that I was most excited about for 2026 or for 2025. As we're looking at this category for 2026,
I see. You're trying to tee me up here to say, well then, Spurgeon, you must be very excited. If you were excited about the Tiger Sport 800, you must be excited about the Suzuki SV7 GX, which is an SV650 powered upright thingama blah, blah, blah. Is that what you wanted me to say?
That's what I wanted you to say.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm glad to have you back. You can read. You can read my body like Braille.
I will say that I was also excited about the Tiger Sport 800 last year. I rode it on Daily Rider. I was ultimately a little underwhelmed by it, not because it didn't deliver what it's supposed to deliver, but because my expectations were so high. Just like so, you got like Triumph in that category. I feel like with Street Triple, which we'll talk about later, and I don't know that sort of 675 to 900 triple. I feel like a lot of those bikes are just so good. And when I saw that bike on paper, I thought, wow, it's going to be great. And I suppose you could say the same about the Suzuki SV7GX, which is essentially an SV650 that has been given this Tiger Sport 800 treatment with a more upright riding position, handlebar that's a little taller, slightly more comfortable, probably some more luggage options, and a larger windscreen.
And I think, it's important. Like, one of my favorite words that you like to use to describe, the more aggressive side of the motorcycles that we talk about is vicious, right? And I think for myself, like when I'm looking at a sport touring motorcycle, I don't want something that's vicious. I want something that's a little bit more rounded off at the edges, comfortable, but also like, I don't need it to have 180 horsepower, to have a good time on it, yada, yada, yada. So I think for me, like I am, and Lance and I did briefly talk about the SV7GX.
For crying out. Okay. We're retreading stuff already?
No. We're not, because we have a unique take, but I do think that as this category plays out, it is going to be interesting 2026 and beyond to see the constant evolution of the sport touring category. And are we going to get a little bit of a swing back into, some models taking a bit more of a sport touring angle versus, I would say in the past, 7 to 8 years, we've seen sport touring bikes be a little bit more, adventure touring, right? And that's probably a segue to one of the bikes that we are planning on seeing in 2026 as a 2026-2027 model is KTM is coming out with a Super Adventure 1390 S Evo, as well as an update to the R, which will probably be in the next category, Adventure. But, so if the Tiger wasn't, vicious enough for Zach Quartz, breaker of ankles, maybe the KTM Super Adventure 1390 will have enough juice under the hood to get your motor running.
Yes. It's been a while since I rode a KTM Super Adventure 1290. Even I don't think I've ever even ridden a 1390. But I do think that engine is terrific on the Mount Rushmore of engines, as we talked about on a previous podcast. I suspect that this new, based on what KTM told me at the launch of the 990 RCR that I attended last year, which has this huge, I forget how it's like an 8-inch touchscreen display, which feels a little almost out of place on a $15,000 to $14,000 sport bike, but I think is going to be maybe not a revelation, but like a pretty big value add for a luxury adventure touring / sport touring bike like the 1390 Super Adventure S. And I bet it's going to be pretty flipping good. It should. I think that bike already had an option for adaptive cruise control and radar control braking, stuff like that. And so, yeah, I feel like this is one of those bikes that is not going to be for everybody, not going to be for everyone's wallet. It's not going to be for everyone's type of riding, but it's one of those bikes that it's hard not to be excited about as a motorcyclist. I think because it is an example of when a brand kind of pulls out all the stops and tries to create this like, super luxury, super capable, super comfortable, super fast, performance oriented, motorcycle, which is, I don't know, that's kind of that's how progress happens, right? Is when brands try to make the best possible thing they can and not like build it to a price point or whatever. So yeah, I'll be excited to try it if and when I can.
Do you have anything? So right out of the gate, and I know we hit the ground running here. We focused a little bit more on the sport / sport touring side of the segment. Anything that has you excited, from a track perspective, from a pure sport bike perspective, anything that's coming down the pike that you are excited about?
I think we'd be remiss if we did not mention updates to the Triumph Street Triple RS and Moto 2X, that's becoming sort of more of a premium offering in Triumph's lineup, which we're going to talk about more later in the standard category. I know you have some stuff to say about that, Spurjo. The thing that we have on the list here, KTM's 990 RCR, which is a bike that we've talked about quite a bit already, since that's the bike that I crashed to hurt myself here. And hopefully you have watched my track review of that bike from last year and maybe even read the article that I wrote. That bike to me was one of my most exciting bikes, or one of my favorite bikes of 2025, in part because I think it represents an interesting category of bikes, which is this sort of like new breed of sport bike that is a street engine and sometimes even a street chassis base, but then built out to look like a sport bike and feel more like a sport bike. So on our list for 2025 in this episode, we talked about Ducati's new Panigale V2, which uses a smaller engine, less horsepower, less weight. And then the Yamaha YZF R9, which takes the MT-09 engine and puts it in a sport bike, a fully fared, sport bike. And then the 990 RCR is the same kind of thing. It's a big parallel twin, almost 1,000 cc's. It's a street-based engine, but they built around it a sport chassis, and then they put a fairing on it and winglets and premium componentry for braking and suspension and stuff like that. And I think it's a fun category. I think it's a really interesting and cool category of motorcycles that those three represent. Those are sort of like the upper echelon of that mid-size premium street-based sport bike market that I think are all pretty cool bikes in their own right. And I think arguably the KTM is the best one of all of them.
Do you think that that's maybe, I know that we're talking a little bit about specific bikes at the moment, but like, what about a trend for this category? Like, do you think that what we're going to see here is more of a trend into some of these? I'm almost remiss to call them middleweights, right? Because, a 990 is essentially
big, yeah.
a liter bike, just with 2 cylinders and not 4.
Yeah. So but that's not on you. We don't make the rules. Like premium bikes are now 1100 cc V4s. And so if you have a 1000 cc twin, it's mid-size. Like I know that feels big. I know if you're a crusty old veteran of motorcycles, you're like, well, I remember when a 916 Ducati was the fastest sucker on the block. Sure. I remember that too, but that's not the world we live in anymore. So to your point. I guess,
so my question is, do you think that this middleweight category, as it gets more sophisticated in its technology, as it gets more capable in its ability, do you see more riders gravitating towards this category, or do you think you're still going to see that top of the line evolution of V4s and inline 4s and mega horsepower, sport bikes?
I think there's always going to be a market for the cream of the crop. First of all, is racing homologation. As long as the big brands are going racing on a domestic and world championship level, they're gonna make and market the big super bikes, big 1000 cc and 1100 cc super bikes. But I think more and more people are going to realize that what's happening with this market, I think, is interesting, because I had a line in my article about KTM, the KTM 990 RCR, which I'm probably not going to remember word for word off the top of my head. But basically I said something like, their manufacturers are starting to build motorcycles that look like what people want and act like what they need. You know what I mean? Like they're not, people have historically
I like that line a lot.
Like GSX R600s or GSX R750s or, Yamaha R6s, CBR 600s, or even like 1000 cc sport bikes. And they're uncomfortable and they don't make a lot of horsepower until you get them up to 8,000, 10,000 RPM. They're just like, they're not good street bikes, because they weren't made to be street bikes. They're made to be homologous. But that doesn't change the fact that people are like, well, I want the sickest bike, so I'm going to get that one because it's sick. And they buy it and they think that they have a great bike, but they don't really, for what they're doing, if they're riding around town or whatever. And so this new category of bikes that takes the sort of practical usability and still plenty of excitement of a street engine like an MT-09 or a 990 Duke or what's the other one? A V-twin, a Ducati V-twin, mid-size Ducati V-twin, great engines. And they're building them more and more for torque, and they're building them for Euro emissions and so on and so forth. But they're still powerful, fun engines, and they're packaging them up in this thing that like looks sexy and cool, so that people are like, oh, cool, I can get that bike because it looks sexy and cool. And what they actually end up getting is a pretty reasonable street bike, or a more reasonable street bike than historically over the past 10, 20 years sport bikes have been, which I think is great. And one more thing I'll add, Spurge, since I'm not out of breath yet, it's such a broad category, right? Like it goes all the way down to, I mean, you could argue it goes all the way down to 300, 400 cc class and a Ninja 500. And then you can go to a Yamaha R7, or a Suzuki GSX 8R. And you like, there's a wide spectrum of bikes that are small to medium to almost big and have increasing levels of premium components and offer some amount of practicality and usability day to day. Well, even as it's like daily rider, I'm getting all excited because I'm a daily rider guy. You know?
I think even as we were trying to figure out categories for this, right? Like we were like, oh, is that a standard bike or is it a sport bike? Right, like there's so many, there's so many fine lines with the way some of this is categorized at this point in time. Does it have a handlebar? Is that a standard? Is that a sport bike?
Right.
But like some of these naked sport bikes are sport bikes, and some of what you're seeing is the sport bikes now are getting those naked sport bike engines, but in something like, you're mentioning the KTM, 990, and it's like, it looks like a purebred, sport bike, but it's got a parallel twin engine in it,
Yeah.
And I think that's the point that you're making.
Yeah. And I mean, like, Aprilia did this with the RS660, RS660 is looks like an aggressive sport bike, and it is an aggressive sport bike. You can take it to the racetrack and you can bail around and like, it'll do sport bike stuff, but it's not punishingly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And, it has a lot of technology and electronic rider aids and stuff like that. And yet it has a balance of capability. And now in 25 and 26, we really saw, well, I won't say it's that the evolution is over, but we saw what I think is kind of a cap on the premium side of it in the Panigale V2 and the YZF-R9 and the 990 RCR. And I guess I kind of hope other brands will join them in doing that, because I think that's like, I think the 100 to 120 horsepower, with nice brakes and nice suspension and good features is just for 13, 15, 16,000 bucks is just a really nice package. And I hope that place becomes really competitive, because I think it's brilliant.
So speaking of the sport category and this middleweight segment, as you're mentioning, becoming very competitive, one of the things that I did with the research was to look and see like, okay, do we have any announcements or any inklings of, big leader, big power, top of the line sport bikes from manufacturers? And it seems like there were a lot of updates, like the Panigale V4 got updates in 2025. The S1000RR got updates in 2025.
Yep.
RSV4 from Aprilia. Like,
and I think the Yamaha came out with they have big winglets on the R1 now, and the Kawasaki ZX10 got some like refreshed bodywork and some updates and stuff like that.
Yep. But from my research, a lot of this was, 2025. And so it seemed like, for the big displacement bikes, I have yet to see anything outside of, there was a prototype from CF Moto that Lance and I briefly touched on in the Eichmann episode, where they're prototyping a potential big V4, and they're going after that class. But outside of that, is there anything that I'm not thinking of, or are we still just kind of like, maybe we saw all the big updates in 25 and 26 is just going to be kind of
yeah, maybe. I mean, I think CF Moto is something to call out, even though that's like,
it's a prototype.
Yeah. And also the Norton, there's a new Norton Manx
prototype of 2, I believe.
Yeah. I think the only ones that run in pre-production, as far as I'm aware, as of the recording of this podcast. But I know Airy went to AIM Expo and saw him in the flesh. I think he said they're pretty cool looking in the flesh, and it's like an interesting premium, offering, or theoretical premium offering.
Be. Yeah.
Could be. Yeah.
I would just say too, for those of you let's back up for a second. The Norton piece, if you were following along, Norton has been trying to be revamped. Norton was a traditional British brand in the 70s. They went out of business, and much like what happened with Triumph, is there's been individual people that have been trying to take that name and that brand and revamp it. It's struggled.
Yeah.
There was bankruptcy issues.
Yeah, yeah.
There was a whole
Some
slew of
embezzlement,
things.
I think. Yeah, unfortunately,
but it's
not
owned by
being-
an Indian firm now. So
TVS, I believe.
Yes, and that's
Yes.
where they're trying to create some stability. They are trying to actually relaunch this brand, and they're trying to do it a little bit more reputably than the last few years have shown us.
Which is encouraging because, you know, we saw Triumph. It was done with Triumph years and years ago. And
I would argue Triumph is the most successful, revamp that we have seen.
Or Polaris buying Indian and like
they don't
revamping-
own them anymore. So
I know.
that's another wait for later in the episode.
Okay. But my point is that is something that, I feel like the Indian resurrection in 2012, 8, 10, whatever. I don't remember when it was tasteful. And I think that a lot of Indians are pretty cool and so on and so forth. Anyway, we'll talk more about that later. One last thing I'll say on the sport category, Spurge. I'm curious to see what happens with this category because it's been a long time, in my opinion, since there's been a real kind of like thunderbolt in the industry. And perhaps a big CF Moto made in China will be that. Perhaps a new Norton made in India will do that. And maybe that's the world we live in now. But, I remember when the R1 was completely redone in 2015 and it was just like, holy cow, it's so much different and it's so much better. And it's still 1,000cc inline four. It like, that hasn't changed, but holy moly, and like, Ducati going from 1299 Panigale twin to the Panigale V4 in 2018, I think. Like just like really kind of seismic and like, holy cow, they're doing something totally new. It's been a while since that happened in the
what do you think?
Category.
What do you think? And again, I'm going to shift gears here in a second, but like, so many of the changes that we're seeing right now at the top of the board are really incremental changes. They're new electronics and so like I'm trying to think of like what that could be. Like maybe it's the turbocharged V3 from Honda and they build a sport bike around it and it's like revolutionary. Like I think it has to be something like that. Like
I mean, I think this is a category where racing feeds a lot of the
but you're seeing even
category.
We just had, but you see it even the MotoGP level, right? And we're going to have conversations on this, in the future. But like MotoGP is changing their rules in 2027, and they're going to be bringing displacement down, you know.
And I think that is what ultimately might stir the pot here is some rule changes in World Superbike or MotoGP rule changes that are going to take effect. Then I don't know exactly what that would do, but I feel like it's possible that it might affect what everyone accepts as being a quote unquote full size superbike. And who knows, maybe, the sanctioning body for MotoGP and World Superbike are either the same or related. And maybe there's a shift that takes place there eventually. I don't know. I think it's going to need to be something, as long as there's there's British Superbike and there's Australian Superbike and there's Moto America and World Superbike that are all racing Honda CBR 1000s and Kawasaki ZX10s and Ducati Panigale V4s and so on and so forth. I don't see how they'll stop selling those bikes. And I don't know what the big next step is, unless some company does a V5 or something, just decides to completely change their.
I guess that was my point with the V3 of the Honda. Like somebody would have to be groundbreaking and hey, check out what we're doing here. Right. It's just weird and different.
So, Ducati came out with a V4 MotoGP bike in 2000, whatever. And then it took them 15 years or something like that to come out with a V4 street bike. Yamaha's transitioning from an inline 4 MotoGP bike to a V4 MotoGP bike. Maybe that turns into maybe the R1 is a V4 in a few years. Maybe that's the next big splash that's made.
I mean, you made the point about, KTM with their 990 RCR. Maybe KTM releases a V4, sport bike, which they've been campaigning in MotoGP,
Yeah, that could be. I mean, that would be cool. Yeah, that'd be cool. All right, Spurge, how have you lasted this long without you transitioning to?
I just gave myself a transition.
Speaking of
KTM,
nice,
one of the biggest changes that we saw in 2025 was that Bajaj Auto now holds a 74.9% controlling stake in KTM's parent company, Perrier Mobility AG. So it was a rough year for KTM. There was bankruptcy, there was ownership change, and this has had a lot of people talking about the future of KTM.
But that's not what you're mad about, Spurge. Tell everybody what you're mad about.
I'm mad about. I'm mad about the fact that Zach got to, get himself flung across a racetrack on a 990 RCR. And I haven't yet been able to find myself, crashing down a Rocky Mountain Road on a 990 Adventure R. So I am pontificating that with all of the transitions around the 990 RCR, we know that Ari Henning is going to ride a 990 Duke R. I want a 990 Adventure R. I want to see what kind of changes they can come up with. Like, they're overdue. Can give us a fresh update for that bike. I haven't heard anything about it. I don't know if you have.
You work hard and you deserve it. Gosh darn it.
I mean, I'm probably not going to go buy one. But I would like to see what they could do to change that category. I think,
Okay, well, let me play devil's advocate here then, Spurge. You want a 990 Adventure R. What do you want different? You have a 890, you got your 890 Adventure R Rally. Mm-hmm. Is the engine not big enough? Is that your problem? Not enough horsepower?
I know you're joking and being sarcastic. I think it's plenty of powerful. I mean, I backed down from the 1090 to the 890 because I wanted something that was a little bit more of that off-road friendly mix.
Because you're not a man that needs to compensate. So what do you need a 990 for? Or you just assume that they're going to make it lighter and better and
your mind is a little bit sharper with that. I couldn't come back fast enough. No, I think what I would like to see with the 990 is exactly that. Could they make it lighter? Could they make it sharper? Could they do something? But also there are times where I miss a bit of the feel of the 1090 engine compared to the 890. Now I know that this is not going to happen. I am saying this with 100% certainty. We're not going to see it. But I would love to see them come back with a mid-size V-twin. And I know that it's not going to happen. The parallel twin is their platform. Yeah. But I would love to see a reintroduction of like a small displacement 990 V-twin engine into this category. I think that would be really cool. That being said, my hope for the 990 Adventure R is, can they shave some weight off of it? Can they do a style update that might be a little bit more intriguing? Can you bring it forward a little bit?
Okay.
Because when they introduced, the 890 had a light style update, but it looked relatively similar to the previous version. So what are we going to see? That's for the designers to tell me what I want. I mean, it's not for me to tell them what I want. They need to sell me on, Spurgeon, you need to get rid of that 890 in your garage and get a 990.
Well, I mean, look, on the one hand, you still have the cutting edge KTM midsize adventure bike.
I do.
Sort of.
But
as soon as the 990 Adventure R comes out, then all of a sudden old Spurgeo's riding the old thing and not the new thing.
I don't care about that. I'm already riding the old thing technically. And I think, the bigger question here is that, and I'm sure a lot of KTM owners, feel this way. It's like, with what KTM has gotten, they've gotten some non-love, if you will, in the press about everything that's been going on over the past year. Like, what does that really do for, KTM motorcycles moving forward? Can they move past this? Can they, right some of the wrongs, whether they're realistic wrongs or they're just wrongs that, maybe are perceived by the public? So that's a question I have. But one of the bikes that I want to talk about, we saw BMW revamp their top of the line GS, right? I don't need to talk about KTMs to a guy that loves BMWs. You want to talk about BMWs. So let's transition into, the R1300 GSA, was revamped and introduced in 2025 with, you get an automatic version of it. Some top of the line bells and whistles. You're looking at a $30,000 plus motorcycle if you really outfit it the way you want to. But then we saw a prototype in 2025 of an update for the F450 GS, and everybody's excited. It looks kind of cool. Like the 310 is long in the tooth. It's dumpy. Let's get this new F450 GS out there.
Dumpy. That's fair.
But what did we see at EICMA this year, but a prototype of the BMW F450 GS. So like,
True enough.
are we going to see this bike actually released? Will BMW actually give any love to the smaller end of their displacement adventure line?
I like to think so. And, you know me, I'm not a huge lover of the parallel twin, like the F series BMWs in general.
So the 310 was a single.
Yeah, I mean the midsize one. Sorry.
Okay.
I mean the F850 and F900. And I'm really not a fan of the G310 GS. I mean, it beats walking, but I just have never liked that bike, especially compared to the stuff in the category with it. You know, like for years now, you've been able to get a Kawasaki Versus X300. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Which I just thought was a better bike, and I don't know. I just thought there were better options. And then now, I mean, God, there's all kinds of stuff that I would recommend instead of that bike. So it's long overdue, in my opinion, for BMW to have this F450, or, you know, have a parallel twin in the category with the CF Moto Ibex 450 and the KTM 390 Adventure R and blah, blah, blah.
And for the same question that we talked about in the sport category, the small displacement category in adventure bikes is really the hot topic right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it is. It's for sure, which is awesome because a lot of those bikes are really cool. And Royal Enfield, you know, Himalayan 450, I guess I'm not going to try and list them all, but the point is,
Cove 450, you have the KTM revamped their line.
We just said we're not going to try and name them all.
You said that. I didn't. I never agreed to that.
So, I'm nervous for BMW is what I was going to say here. I think that much as I've talked a little bit of trash and thrown a little bit of shade at a BMW F900 GSs in the past. But they're awfully good. I feel objectively, like if you want to have an adventure bike, if you want to go out and
they're very good.
Crash through stuff. Yeah. I think it's quite a good bike.
Yeah.
And you know, BMW's Boxer line of GSs is obviously the most iconic and arguably important in the history of motorcycling, or history of adventure motorcycling. And whether you think the R1300 or R1250 GS is a great bike, or you think it's ugly or whatever, I don't really care. The point is it's important, and they are fantastically capable motorcycles, and they sell a crap ton of them because they're really good bikes. These are big shoes to fill, even though that 450 GS is small and, a new, you know, a cut from whole cloth entrant into this category. I just feel like it's got to be really, really, really good in order.
Well, based on the AI photos of it racing through an abandoned amusement park, you know, how can it not be?
Yeah. I mean, and that is something that, like, I don't know, it doesn't actually matter, right? That it doesn't have anything to do with the capability of the bike that they AI'd those photos, but it doesn't add this like weird tickle in the back of your brain where you're like, what are you not telling us about what it can do and can't do? That you
I don't think they know, because I don't think they have
right.
one that's a working production model yet.
What?
Is my
you don't
guess.
think? Yeah, like, sure they do. I mean, they have a prototype. Oh, not a production, but they have a surely prototype.
I guess I do have I have feelings about AI, and like I'm not against AI, but I do think that in a case of like you're showing what the bike can do, using AI generated photos of a bike jumping, that doesn't actually show me what the bike can do. So like I have some issues there.
Right.
I would say that like I'm excited to see what BMW can do. I think that this small displacement category is being more important than ever before because there is a lot of competition here. One of the competitors that we saw announced or teased rather in 2025 that we are getting production models of shortly is the Kawasaki KLE 500. We have been talking on this podcast for years about like Kawasaki needs to update the Versys 300X.
Right. Versys X300 needs to have the 400cc engine, and then they came out with the 500. We're like, why doesn't it have the 500?
Yeah. So we're getting it, and it's going to be the KLE 500. It looks awesome. This is a bike that I'm excited about. I am excited because the parallel twin from Kawi, the smaller 500, is just such a cool engine. It works in so many different applications. And I think from an adventure bike standpoint, you get something that's a little bit smaller than like your big behemoth full-size adventure bike, but is going to be, in my mind, and maybe I'm going to be proven completely wrong at the press launch for this, but like, a competent adventure bike from Kawasaki versus something like a KLR 650.
Yes, maybe.
You don't think so? You don't think this is going to be
the thing
fun?
about this KLE 500 is that, and we might be shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit, because I think by the time this podcast goes live, the press launch may have happened.
Yeah.
And you already can read, I think Aries scheduled to go on that first ride, right? So you could go to Common Tread and read Aries' first ride, or maybe even see a little video that he does, more to come on that later. But speculating in the time of information is dangerous. But right now, we don't know what it's like to ride. And I just, when I'm looking at the specs here, Spurge, let me throw some stuff at you here. And people on the internet have chewed this over a lot already. So I'm not saying anything new. But for example, KLE 500 ground clearance, 7.3 inches.
That's not a lot.
7.3 inches. Kawasaki versus X300 ground clearance, 7.1 inches. 0.2 of an inch more ground clearance. Less than 1/4 of an inch more ground clearance. Seat height on the KLE 500, 34.3 inches versus X300, 32.1 inches. So you're getting a seat height that's 2.5 inches, almost 2.5 inches higher, and you're getting 1/4 inch more ground clearance. Something's not stirring the Kool-Aid, right?
Yeah.
Why? I don't know, that to me. And honestly, when I look at a picture of the KLE 500,
I would say, just before you talk about the picture, when they're measuring ground clearance, they're also not measuring ground clearance with a rider sitting on a compressed suspension, depending on your rider weight.
Right.
So like when we're talking about the average adventure bike, and you're talking about like 11 inches of ground clearance, that's like, that's not bad, until you put a rider on it and then you start, scraping some rocks, and that's why skid plates are on adventure bikes. But when you're talking about 7 inches of ground clearance with a rider on top, it's, yeah.
Yeah. And what I was going to say is, when I look at a picture of this bike, just a profile picture, if you go to the spec page on Kawasaki's website, I feel like I can see a pocket of empty space above the engine and below the frame. It's like I feel like a crotchety old, like, I don't know, crusty old man looking at a kid sagging his pants, being like, pull up your pants, you're not doing it right. I feel like I can see where the engine could just be mounted higher. I don't know. Maybe, I'm sure if I talked to a Kawasaki engineer, they would explain to me why I'm wrong. I can't get over the fact that I when I look at it, I'm like, why is the engine mounted down there? And the fact that the distance between the top of the seat and the bottom of the engine is clearly just a lot bigger, even though the engine is not a lot bigger.
I think what
on
I'm
the outside, I just don't know what to say about that. It just seems like there's some misses right out of the gate before you even sit on the thing.
I am cautiously optimistic about this bike.
I'm
gonna continue to fight Zach's pessimism here, in the fact that, like, I think it's gonna be a great engine. I think it's gonna be,
you don't think it's gonna be a great engine. We know it's a good engine.
We know it's a great engine. I think it's gonna be.
It's not great. It's good.
A fun package, especially for riders looking to get into an entry level adventure bike, or, as we saw, really what was popular about the Versys X was that there were, riders that were aging out of wanting to, push a GS 1250 down a trail. Right. And so,
or out of their garage.
Yeah. And they wanted something a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
And I think I think from a styling exercise, this is it's definitely something bold that, doesn't really fit in anything else in Kawasaki's lineup. Not that they didn't take styling cues maybe from some of their existing adventure bikes that are out there on the market already, but like, it adds something a little bit different to Kawi's lineup. And I think it's going to help with, that small adventure segment, bringing new riders into the sport in general, whether that's, transitioning riders over into adventure riding, or just attracting, new folks into the sport that want something affordable.
Yeah, no, I mean, I want to be excited about it. I just just
let yourself be excited.
fuel capacity on the KLE 500, 4.2 gallons. Fuel capacity on the versus X300, Spurge?
I don't know if
4.5 gallons. What are we doing, Kawasaki? Like,
Zach's not happy about this. I would imagine that with 4.2 gallons of fuel, you're going to average 45 miles a gallon. You're going to be close to a 200-mile range on the tank.
Is your shirt turning green? Are you just like, do you work for Kawasaki PR now?
I don't get so. I'm not that. I don't give a shit about fuel miles. Everybody gets so upset. Like, I know you.
You don't care about fuel range?
Not on this particular bike. It's gonna get over 150 miles to a tank. Like, you're gonna want to pull over at some point and get some extra gas.
Oh, so you're saying that the seat's uncomfortable? Okay, well, great. So that's the prediction right out of the gate that Spurge is saying.
What was the article that you wrote about where? Oh, I think it was the Goldwing where you were upset because you were passing people and then you had to pull over and get gas every 180 miles or some shit like that.
Yeah,
wasn't it the Goldwing review?
Yeah, it was a Goldwing. I couldn't even. I was pulling over 190 miles. Like, come on, man. If you're going to give me
we have been asking Cowie to update this bike for years to give us the bigger engine. They finally did it. Neither one of us has ridden it. I am choosing to stay optimistic that this will still be a fun little entry level into the adventure segment for Kawasaki.
What I will say, perhaps to wrap up the ADV category, what I will say with regard to the KLE 500 and the BMW F450 GS is that all of the bikes in this category, in my opinion, have pretty serious flaws, and that'll happen in a small, I don't want to say budget, but cost conscious, small displacement, perhaps entry level category of motorcycling. You'll have some misses, and that's okay. So, the KTM 390 Adventure R has some problems. The CF Moto Ibex 450 has some problems. The Royal Enfield Himalayan 450 has some problems. And so the KLE 500 is going to have some problems, and the BMW F450 GS is going to have some problems. I just think that when you've waited this long to get into the category, right, I just feel like the standard is different. Like you don't get to come out with a bike in 2026 to enter the 400 to 500 cc adventure category. And I think some of the mistakes that could be made will be inexcusable as far as I'm concerned. Whereas if you came out with one 6 years ago, it'd be like, cool, you putting a foot forward at least,
I think I understand with what you're saying. I think this bike has been a very long time coming. But you're
Extremely.
you're looking at a bike that's, for the base model, $6,600 in the US, $7,500 if you get it with all the bells and whistles, which include aluminum backed handguards and skid plates and other things like that. I think that for the price, it's going to intrigue a lot of riders. I think the styling I think a lot of people buy a bike on styling, especially if you're just starting off or you're in that entry level category. I think there's a lot of potential here, and it remains to be seen. I'm staying bullish on this KLE, and Zach is going to take a bear stance. I've been listening to a lot of financial podcasts lately, so we're going to use this as a transition. We're talking about the entry level categories. I think that's a perfect segue into: do you think we are going to see a $6,000 Harley-Davidson in 2026? That is what has been promised to us as we talk about the cruiser segment. Do we think we are going to see a $6,000 Harley?
I think we just might. But before we talk about that, Spurjo, let's take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsor, Motul.
All right, we are back. Zach, the question remains, will we see a $6,000 Harley-Davidson in the year 2026?
So many questions around this, right? We're speculating based on some stuff we saw online that, I don't know, a lot of people have been speculating that Harley will just bring back an air-cooled version of something, like some heritage model, an 883 or 1200 cc air-cooled. model that's the Sportster, basically the old air-cooled Sportster.
If you spend enough time online, there's a lot of conspiracy theories out around, like they're going to bring back the 883. But
I read patents for this factory in China where they submitted permits for smelting the kind of metal that Harley used to use in the spark plugs that.
Calm down. Do you think?
Sorry,
so do you think that? I guess that's almost a separate question. Like, I think that there is a possibility they could potentially bring back the 883, at least for the American market. Part of the reason they got away was that it wasn't meeting Euro standards. They couldn't sell it in Europe anymore. But like, do we think that the $6,000 Harley that's been teased by the CEO and, you know, the motor company in general, do we think this is going to be that, or do we think that this is going to actually be something net new? And should we be excited about it?
Well, it's a little hard to be excited about a $6,000 bike from Harley-Davidson based on what we've seen in this category in the past. Exactly. Yeah. Like, I remember when the Street 500 and Street 750 came out, and I mean,
we're not good.
Yeah. Did you ever ride one?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Really, really surprisingly bad. Build quality, surprisingly bad. Ride quality, surprisingly bad. Components.
Brakes,
it was just
like the brakes dangerous,
amazingly bad. Yeah. And that's too bad because, you know, it's easy to throw shade at Harley. It's easy to pick on the 800-pound gorilla in the world of motorcycling. But I'm not at my core a Harley hater. And frankly, I hate to see, I wasn't a fan of that bike because it was bad. And I was also not a fan of the decision. Like, did leadership at Harley-Davidson ride that bike and think, yep, nice. This is the one. We're going to take it to dealerships. This is
going to bring people into the fold of Harley-Davidson.
Like, come on. And so I think the reason that we're all angling for an air-cooled Sportster resurrection is that that's what people secretly want, right? It feels like something's missing from Harley's lineup.
I don't even think it's a secret. I think that's what people want. Full stop.
That's fair. Yeah.
You know?
Well, and the other thing that's hanging in the air, that people have pointed out rightly, I think, is the X, what's it called? X440 or something like that. The little parallel twin
that it's a
Chinese made,
market. Yep.
Foreign market Harley-Davidson. I think there's actually, Spurg, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe there is a first ride review of this bike because our man Dustin Whelan was in Japan and got his hands on one of these bikes.
And I also think this is the bike that you can find in America. They use it at the Harley Learn to Ride fleets, but you can't actually buy it in America. Does that sound like I'm making that up? I thought that I think they brought them into America for just teaching people how to ride at their ride courses.
So I got the name wrong of the one that Dustin rode anyway. He rode a 2024 Harley-Davidson X350. The Chinese made Harley, he rode it in Japan. And interesting take on, and history on the bike. And he talks about how it's related, you know, built in, either adjacent or identical factory as the Benelli 350 or whatever. Anyway, the point is, it's possible, I think, that we have to all admit that it's possible that that's the bike that Harley would bring some version of that Asian made, parallel twin. I think it's a parallel twin, right? To the United States market. I just hope they don't do that. I hope Harley-Davidson doesn't do that because I don't think it's going to work. I think the same thing is going to happen, that the Harley base is going to reject it. And anyone who wants a bike like that is going to be like, I'll just buy a Kawasaki Eliminator because because I'm not going to, no one that likes Harleys is going to like this Harley. And if I want that type of bike, then I'll just buy a bike that's made by a different company that does the same thing. And there won't be any Harley tax associated with the price tag. So I just think that would really handcuff Harley. And I think that an air-cooled resurrection, as I said, is something that like would actually get people fired up. I don't know, to some extent.
So, if you're thinking to yourself, hey, you two knuckleheads, you're not paying attention to the news. Harley actually announced a bunch of new models. At the time of recording this, Harley-Davidson has an announcement coming out later this week with some announcements for their 2026 range. It seems like, from what we can gather, that's going to be some changes to the touring lines. So like the Street Glide is going to become the Street Glide Limited. The Road Glide is going to become the Road Glide Limited with some changes there. They're going to update the trikes and some CVO models. The biggest thing we saw Harley do in 2025, this is a look back on 2025. Harley did release a very out of the ordinary motorcycle for them. They released a King of the Baggers replica, which I believe Ari rode for us.
He did. There's a video on YouTube with a little walk around, and there's a great first ride article on Common Tread.
Yeah, so that was the CVO Road Glide RR. They only made 131 bikes. They were priced at $110,000, and it was something out of the ordinary for Harley. Now, my only critique was if you've ever sat on a King of the Baggers bike, it's big, it's tall. I like that. I think they were afraid to do that with their actual one that they're selling, so that it has the low seat height on it. It's still, kind of mid controls, not rear controls. But the point is they took a stab at doing something, out of the ordinary and different. And I think for 2025, that was kind of cool to see. But so far, outside of this veiled, comment around, we're going to see a $6,000 motorcycle, we really are left kind of scratching our heads as to what it is going to be. And if it's not going to be the 883 or the 1200, Sportster engine platform, basically, are they thinking secretly about bringing that back? Or some of the rumors floating around the internet true? Do we think we're going to see that return?
I think that initially this comment was Jochen Zeitz who said that, wasn't it? In other words, the old CEO at this point was the one that said, what's that?
Not Artie.
I believe we published this story initially about how the CEO said today that in 2026, you'll be able to buy a Harley-Davidson with an MSRP under $6,000. And we published that in July, and that was the previous CEO at this point. So maybe that's not something that the new CEO subscribes to, right?
Well, that's a good segue in the fact that, so one of the main changes that we saw in 2025 for Harley-Davidson was a changing of the guard, right? So Jochen Zeitz decided to leave. He was succeeded by Artie Stars. Artie Stars is coming from a previous role at Topgolf. He was the CEO over at Topgolf. Before that, I believe it was Pizza Hut. And there was a lot of speculation around whether he'd be able to step up into an enthusiast-led business like Harley-Davidson. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in 2026 for him. Go ahead.
I just want to say one more thing about the air-cooled Harley thing. The potential Sportster air-cooled resurrection, blah, blah, blah. This is why I think Harley should do it. Do it like Costco does with pizza and hot dogs. Just lose money on that to get people in the door. That's what I think. That's what I hope Harley does. Not because I'm a financial idiot, which I am, but I think that that's the kind of attitude that Harley needs to have at this point. Give away a Sportster for $6,000, even if it costs you $6,500 to make them. If you get someone on a Sportster for $6,000, I think it's much more likely that they'll come back and buy a bigger Harley. I guess that's where I think Harley is right now, with dealers closing and market share shrinking and interest waning from where I'm sitting. They need something aggressive and interesting. And like I said, something to get people fired up. And I think that's like something that would inspire people, in my opinion.
I think you have more leeway than you're giving credit for. I think if you brought back the 883 under $10,000 and it was an American-made, air-cooled, real Harley-Davidson, I think you'd have wiggle room over the $6,000 mark. I think if you could get it in at like $89.99,
maybe. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're basing this on the $6,000 price tag that the CEO said. So that's the only reason I bring that up.
The current Sportster, they do have one that's under $10,000 now, right? So isn't it $9,999?
It was it the Nightster maybe?
But it was the new engine. It wasn't the old engine.
It's the liquid cooled thingamajig. It's not.
But maybe to your point, like if they've already got the tooling and everything else for the 83, maybe there is a way that they could, do it as a loss leader, bring it back for $6,000. Who knows?
Anyway, you were talking about Indian.
I was about to segue. I had a perfect segue lined up, and that's okay. I think it's a good interruption. Harley-Davidson had a CEO change in 2025. Indian Motorcycles had an ownership change. So Zach asked a question earlier about when did Polaris take over controlling stake in Indian Motorcycles. Polaris acquired the Indian brand in 2011. And from 2011 until 2025, they did more for Indian, it could be argued, than any other ownership group of Indian since it was owned originally by when Indian was founded. So Indian's been passed around a lot over the last 125 years. 2026, if my math is correct, is the 125th anniversary of the Indian brand being created. But now Polaris is no longer going to be the ownership. Indian is going to be set afloat on its own. There are some investment groups that are kind of coming in and taking control of this outside of Polaris. And I think the real question for 2026, outside of we saw the FTR go away in 2025, and there's a new, potential 125th anniversary chief coming. The real question is for 2026, what's going to happen with Indian? I would say is probably my open-ended, question is this transition going to work, or is this new ownership structure going to falter?
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that. I guess I would challenge you, Spurge. I'll answer your question with another question. Where does Indian go? What do they have? Indian has the basics. They got affordable-ish, entry-level-ish cruisers. Not like 400cc entry level, but they have low seat height, maybe sub $10,000 bikes, right? Not the Chiefs. What is it called? The Scouts. Scout. Thank you. Scouts. You're right. The Scout. I think there's a Scout 60 or whatever. That's the 5-speed with the smaller engine and blah blah. And then they have all the way up to full dresser Roadmaster. I think the Roadmaster is still for sale, as far as I understand it. And everything in between, in the sort of standing toe to toe with Harley, in the sort of heritage touring cruiser game. But what's next? Do you try to, I guess I'm going to answer your question with a question is what you're asking me. Does Indian maintain its position as Harley-Davidson's opposition, right? Or does Indian try to go after a broader motorcycle market, or do they keep, I know that they try to dabble with that with the FTR, and obviously the FTR went away. But do you try to expand your line outside of just, American heritage cruisers if you are Indian? I hope so, is my answer. I hope that there's some sort of free thinking that happens. And I struggle with this a little bit because I don't really like I remember when Porsche first came out with its SUV, first came out with the Cayenne, I think it was, right? And I don't remember what year that was, but I remember my dad being really offended by that and being like, ugh, like a Porsche SUV, what are we doing here? And I think there are plenty of purists who felt that way. Like Porsche is a sports car company and it should stay in its lane. But of course all the SUVs SUV-ish vehicles that Porsche has have been quite successful with the company, and they've branched out into, 4-door models and electric and, whatever. It's hard to blame the company for doing that, right? For branching out and doing, reaching for other bits of the market. I don't think, if you want,
you get Harley-Davidson, and Harley-Davidson tried it with the Pan America. And I think, Lance and I went into some detail here on a number standpoint, but the Pan America hasn't been an amazing success for Harley-Davidson. I think it makes up less than 3% of all the bikes that they sell.
And this is the problem for Harley-Davidson, because historically Harley-Davidson has sold so many cruiser and tour, especially touring models like street glides and road glides. They've sold so many of those bikes that if a new model's not doing really well, then it's just hard it doesn't pencil. It's hard for it to make sense for Harley to do it, but smaller companies can have more success with that. Like, and Indian is a smaller company than Harley-Davidson. So does Indian have some ground to stand on? The problem is that they're so propped up by tradition and heritage that
Right.
like, I don't know how Harley-Davidson can at least argue that they've kept up with the times or they've moved forward with technological advances and that kind of thing. But it's hard to look at an Indian model and be like, wow, that was really forward thinking, aside from the FTR. And I'm not sure where they go. Like, do they go to the adventure category? Do they try to do another sport naked thing? Like, I'm trying to think of what category they can branch into.
I liked the FTR engine. The chassis that it was in, just didn't know what it wanted to be when it grew up. Like, I rode that bike when it was first launched. It had fueling issues that I don't think were ever resolved. The foot pegs weren't fun to stand up on, but it was kind of an off-road bike. It was a horrible bike to actually ride off-road. It wasn't really an off-road bike. It was positioning itself as a flat tracker. Nobody actually really flat track is.
And then eventually it went from a 19-inch front wheel to a 17 because
So
like now it's sort of a Ducati
bike.
Monster kind of thing. Yeah. And then it was not, but that was also muddy because you're like, is it a flat tracker or is it a Ducati Monster? What is it?
It didn't know what it wanted to be when it grew up. And I think, the issue that I think Indian is probably going to struggle with is, Indian presumably, and I don't know the exact numbers, but like you would assume that with Polaris, there were deeper pockets to play with trying some of this stuff out. If Indian is now owned by some private equity money, how much are they willing to lose on the gamble? And are you just going to continue with the tooling that already exists and making some existing models and try to maintain profitability? Or are you going to take some risks and go after some expanding segments? And we've talked about this before on the podcast. You wrote an article about it. The sport bike segment is growing. Surprisingly, right? Like the sport bike segment has seen growth, in a way that like when you actually look at the numbers, I didn't expect to see it, and so like, do you bring back the FTR, but you make it a little bit more like a true naked sport bike? Do you change some things around? Do you throw a half fairing on it? Like, I don't know. Maybe there's something to be said there. Maybe there's not. I don't know, but that's what I would love to see.
Yeah. I think the risk ability will be lower, like you said, because the financial arm of the company will be not as strong, but I think the risk willingness might be higher. And I don't know. I'm totally speculating, but that's what we do here. Speculation's fun. Can we transition into what is arguably the most
lovable,
stunning, and impactful cruiser update for 2026, Spurgeon? I don't even have to say the name of the bike.
Nope.
You know what I'm talking about.
Everybody knows what you're talking about.
Everybody knows what it is.
As we are recording this, Ari Henning's actually riding this bike, I believe, or pretty
Tomorrow.
close to it.
Yeah.
The Honda Rebel 300 is getting an e-clutch.
Yes.
And I think this speaks to e-clutch and automatic, expansion within Honda's line in general, but they're starting with a small displacement entry-level cruiser.
What do you mean starting with?
As far as like the expansion goes, it's now trickling down into
trickling down. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. I meant for 2026, we're seeing it start here and it's going to be expanded in other bikes in their line.
So if you've ridden a Honda Rebel 300 and you were just like, I couldn't even focus because it's just like so fast and there's so much going on. Well, don't worry. Now you don't have to shift. You can just ride the bike and focus on the vicious nature of okay, I'm going to drop the sarcasm thing. This is a new piece of technology that Honda is applying to its smallest motorcycle yet. We have ridden e-clutch models of Honda's CBR 650 and CB 650R. And it is really interesting, cool technology whereby basically through a system of sensors and servos and electric motors and sensors, you can get on the motorcycle, whichever motorcycle has the e-clutch, whether it's a new Rebel 300 or a previous model. You can get on the bike, start the bike in neutral, and you can pull in the clutch lever and push down on the shifter and engage first gear if you want to, or you can just push down on the shift lever without pulling the clutch in. And when you push down on the shift lever, the bike will pull in the clutch lever before the bike stalls, and you'll be in first gear with the clutch in, even if you have not touched the left handlebar whatsoever. Do you follow? It's crazy. And then when you add revs, it will engage the clutch for you and move forward automatically. So it'll be sort of a twist and go thing. You don't need to do that. And then as you roll down the road, you shift with your foot as normal, whether via crick shifter or with by pulling the clutch in and shifting. But the point is, you can learn clutch engagement without having to know how to do it. It's really fascinating technology in so much as it's the only, in my, as far as I know, Spurg, it is the only piece of, let's say broadly, automatic transmission technology in the motorcycle realm that maintains a clutch lever and a foot shifter and allows you to do it if you want to, but does not demand that you do it to make the motorcycle go.
So I think it's a very clear distinction that this is not the same as Honda's DCT transmission.
Correct.
So with the DCT transmission, you do have a full automatic mode where you can just put the bike into automatic mode and it goes. There's not a clutch. You still have to shift this bike, right? You don't have to necessarily use a clutch, but you still have to, use your left foot to shift it through. I think this is really cool. We had an episode, I don't know, 2 seasons ago, where I don't even think it was a focus in the episode. It might have been like one topic. And we were talking about automatic transmissions, DCTs, clutchless, e-clutch, yada, yada, yada. And there was another outlet out there that pulled a clip of Zack and Ari and I talking and basically took our words out of context and said that we were, shitting all over people that wanted automatic transmissions. That's not what we were doing. And I will say that, we never really even bothered to defend ourselves because we just didn't care enough to go after these comments. But I think anything that we can do to make motorcycling more accessible is a good thing. Yeah. I personally liked learning how to use a clutch as part of my journey in becoming a motorcyclist. I liked the challenge of it. I liked learning it. It was something that was very rewarding for me. I can understand and empathize that there's people out there that might want to ride a motorcycle, but don't have that same instinct of wanting to learn the clutch side of things.
Or they just want the consequences to be less when they mess it up.
Exactly. And I think this is a beautiful middle ground of you can learn to ride a motorcycle, still get the feeling of shifting through the gears without having to have the pressure of I got to pull the throttle back while I'm letting the clutch out, while I'm moving this lever with my foot. And it can be overwhelming. It can be intimidating.
Yep. Sure.
And so for me, the fact that Honda is bringing this technology down to an entry-level bike is something that's pretty cool.
It is cool. I hope that it helps people feel confident and motivated to get into motorcycling. It's a very Honda move to apply this type of technology to such a beloved model as the Rebel 300, which is so approachable and affordable, and Honda's blessing it with this technology that really thus far has only been on I won't say expensive bikes, but mid-level to top tier models, which I think is pretty cool.
Another bike that's getting this technology in 2026 is a bike that we saw released in 2025, and that is the Honda Hornet. The Honda Hornet was a favorite bike, not just for one Lance Oliver, but also, Zach, you were pretty fond of it for the Daily Rider programming slate. Were you
top of the leaderboard in 2025 baby?
There you go.
So I think this completes our transition to talking about standard bikes. Now we can move into talking about
standard motorcycles. We've moved through the cruiser segment, and we are now talking about standard motorcycles with that amazing Hornet transition. Yeah,
and I think it stands to reason that the CB750 Hornet would have an e-clutch option. I think that bike is, Lance Oliver is really interested in that bike. Has he bought one yet as of recording this podcast? No, but he keeps talking about it, right? We're agreed. He keeps talking about buying.
He does.
And I think that bike is going to garner the most interest from people like Lance, who are seasoned veterans of motorcycling who have owned multiple bikes before, and they think they want either they're downsizing from a larger, more intimidating bike, or they just sort of like they want the new Suzuki SV650 of motorcycling, this new kind of like third bowl of porridge of naked bike, just like really, really perfect in a lot of ways. And I don't think it's going to be as much for people who are like, never ridden a motorcycle before. Maybe I'll get one of those Honda Hornet thingies. And so I don't think the e-clutch is necessarily going to appeal to as many buyers as it might for a Rebel 300. But that's the thing about this e-clutch technology, is that I don't know the inner workings of it intimately, but I feel confident in saying that it is significantly less expensive for Honda to apply to a model and significantly less complicated. And so
then like DCT or something like
then
that?
DCT, excuse me. Yes. Then DCT. What DCT involves literally a whole transmission with two clutches inside and they engage in different, and like it's massively complex technology. Especially it exists in the car world as well, but especially in the motorcycling world, it's unique to Honda and in production bikes anyway, and is very advanced and also expensive. And Honda has spent a lot of money building it. But the C-clutch thing is less so and offers a lot of the same benefits, which is pretty cool.
Well, I think it's important to note, and then we'll transition a little bit deeper into the 2026 category here. But with Honda bringing that to the 26 Hornet, presumably, one of the things that the Hornet shares with the Transalp is the engine. The engine is awesome. It really is a smoking engine, and it'll be interesting to see. I think the application there probably makes more sense in the Transalp version of that bike.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point, because it's sort of like a recluse clutch, situation where you can you're going to stall less.
You're trying to learn how to ride off road.
Yeah, totally.
You don't want to stall the bike. Well, that was one of the big things. Was I really was upset that we didn't see a DCT offering for that. I understand the complexity. They're trying to keep costs down, but if they can do an e-clutch version, I think that's going to make a lot more sense.
E-clutch is a no-brainer there for sure.
Yeah. So, all right. That being said, Zach, the standard category. Let's kind of carry through small displacement here, right? We've been talking a lot about small displacement bikes. We just talked about the Honda Rebel. In the standard category, we are seeing Triumph expand their 400 line. You and I rode Triumph 400s to the top of the world. And I remember somebody asked, can you actually tour on this bike? Is it capable? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I did like 12 days straight on this motorcycle. You can definitely do it. Yeah. But I think it's cool.
I'm so tired of that question. Can you tour on that bike? Can you go long distances?
Yeah.
The answer is always yes.
Always yes.
It's just what your tolerance is.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
And you
can tour on anything.
If you're trying to do when we did that 25-hour day, we were actually stopped in traffic so much that's probably a bad example. But if you're trying to do an iron butt ride on a 400cc motorcycle, probably going to be miserable.
Right.
But if you're just doing 250, 300 mile days on a Triumph 400, it was a reasonable little bike to putt around Indy on. But I think for 2026, we are seeing the Tracker, we are seeing the Thruxton, so some style upgrades.
And different seating position, right? The Thruxton's going to be a lot more kind of sporty and kind of aggressive, and the Tracker is
cool, and they look cool.
Sure, they look cool. Yeah, I think it makes sense to sort of garnish or sort of sprinkle some different styling around this 400cc platform, because it's been, I don't know, I'm not sure what the sales figures are on those bikes. Exactly, but it seems like it's been a boon for Triumph to have those available for both the global market and for the US. So I hope that it's more fuel to that fire, because I think they're far from my favorite Triumphs, but they're cool enough, and they're I'm looking for the right word, predictable application of Triumph's sort of styling cues and that kind of thing, but also pretty well curated. I think, they look the part.
And speaking of looking the part, Triumph is updating a lot of bikes in their lineup this year, but as long as we're talking about the standards, at the time of this recording, Dustin Whelan just released a first ride review of a new T100, T120, and Scrambler 900. I think,
well, you say new. Well, how are they new again? I don't remember. Surely you read Dustin's article, Spurgeon.
It's light styling upgrades, and a few different pieces of technology. But again, I think what's really the name of the game here in this particular category is that they haven't changed so much that you're not going to recognize them and that you're not going to like them. So it's a little bit.
Yep.
I don't want to say rinse, wash, repeat, but they've got a formula that's really working right now.
Yeah.
This neo retro kind of a thing, and I think these bikes are ones that we've really liked in the past. I'm personally a fan, and you're just seeing some styling cues updated for the new year.
Arguably the bigger move. We mentioned Triumph's Street Triple updates a little bit earlier. But in the standard category from Triumph is that Trident 800, which will, as far as I understand it, use the same engine as the Tiger Sport 800, and the sort of aesthetic and the sort of stripped down neoclassic look as the Trident 660. So it'll be the bigger engine and slightly upgraded features features and electronics and componentry with the bigger engine, which I think will probably be pretty cool. Though, Spurge, you have a bone to pick with Triumph over this because
it's going to replace the Street Triple R.
And I don't know if Triumph would say it's replacing it, but like practically it is replacing it because they removed that bike from the lineup.
2025 is the last year you can get a Street Triple R at this point. And that's been such a beloved motorcycle. And yes, they're keeping the RS. And, I think that's kind of what they're angling for is there's probably a lot of people that walked into showrooms and, for the price difference, they're like, oh, I'll just buy the RS. But arguably, I think the R was probably a better bike for most people just riding around a naked sport bike on the street if you weren't planning on going and doing track days or anything like that.
Yeah. But the different engine tune on those bikes has like varied over the years. And ultimately, I think, I don't know. Triumph sort of wrote the destiny for that bike, I think, because at one point the R didn't have the big fancy color screen, but if you got the RS, then you got the big fancy color screen.
Well, hang on, because there was a Street Triple S, a Street Triple R, and a Street Triple RS, and they got rid of the S, which I agree was kind of like, why not just bump to the R? But the R had, it still had a really good suspension. It just didn't have the race tune suspension.
I just think it's one of those things that like, if you're riding one, you're not going to wish you were on the other. But people, like you said, I think people were in showrooms and they were just like, I'm just going to splurge and get the slightly, because this one has more power, even though the street tune was probably better for what they were doing, like you said. But like I said, I think Triumph kind of, I don't know, put that writing on the wall and then read it.
I agree. But I think the main thing that I liked about that bike was, it was roughly, let's say $3,000 less than the RS. And so for a little over $10,000, you could go buy a pretty wicked, awesome naked sport bike. And I've not ridden the Trident 800, but it doesn't strike me as necessarily going to have the same edge of the Street Triple R. That's all I'll say.
Yep. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I also, if people want edge, they're going to splurge on the RS. And if they don't want edge, then
there's a $3,000 difference in price there. You're paying an extra, roughly 35% of the bike's MSRP to jump up, and not everybody needs the more aggressive suspension or the extra 4 or 5 horsepower or stuff like that. Yeah,
but like we were talking about with sport bikes earlier, it's not about what people need. It's about
what they perceive they want.
Yeah, what they perceive they need. Yeah.
Do people want a retro version of Suzuki's parallel twin line?
GSX-8.
Do they want a GSX-8 TT? Do you think?
Hard to say. That model is sliced so thin because there's the GSX-8S and then there's the GSX-8T and then there's the GSX-8 TT, which are all naked versions of that bike. And the T and the TT have a round headlight and sort of retro thing. And
isn't the GSX-8R part of it? Like, isn't there?
Yeah, I hadn't even gotten there yet.
Okay.
The GSX-8R has the fully fared one that looks like a sport bike, but they're like, it's a lot of bikes built off the same thing. And it's a good engine and it's a good chassis. And
A few seasons ago, we said, Suzuki, you're not doing anything. And now all of a sudden, look at
Now
them.
they're just like spraying models at us and we're like, whoa, hey.
And I think this is the same engine that's in their V-Strom, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
V-Strom 800 DE is the same engine. And yeah, I mean, it's a good engine.
My point in bringing this up, and Zach and I kind of went back and forth in pre-production, and we're like, are we actually excited about this? Here's my point, is that I think a lot of people buy motorcycles based on style. I think we forget that sometimes in our role or just in general. Like there's a lot of people out there like, no, I just like the way this looks. And this is very similar to me in my mind as to, what Yamaha did a few years ago when they introduced the XSR. You could buy an XSR 900 or you could buy an MT-09. And people were like, the MT-09 looks like a robot. Ah, the XSR. Yeah, that looks nice.
Right, exactly.
I like that,
it's just it's that bike that I like, except it looks different, better than the one.
For me, if somebody's looking at a GSX-8R and they're like, I don't want that, I don't want a sport bike, but then they look this and they're like, oh, this is kind of like a 80s naked bike. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I agree.
That's kind of what I like about this. I am curious, when Yamaha did the XSR 750 or the XSR 700 and the 900, that was like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago already.
It was a long time ago, yeah.
Other brands have tried some of this like neo cafe racer type aesthetic, and they haven't been super successful with it. Probably not as successful as Yamaha was. So do you think it's a little bit late in the game for this style, or do you think Suzuki's taken enough of a turn that maybe this is, plucking at the heartstrings of a newer, younger audience?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that, I think this is really late for Suzuki. I think it was late to come out with a parallel twin for Suzuki, to just sort of like update this whole lineup of bikes, and they finally did it, and they did a pretty good job of it. But like, you're like, where were you for all those years? And it's the same thing with Kawasaki giving us that small adventure bike. You're like, you guys been asleep or what? Like what? And so, I'm sure that engineers and R&D folks at these companies would say like, well, it takes a long time to develop all this stuff. Sure. Yeah. And there's homologation and there's a lot of stuff you got to do. I get it. I remember the first line of your Yamaha Tenere 700 first ride. Do you remember the very first line of your article? Do you remember what you said?
Mine?
Yeah. Your article of the the Tenere 700 when it first came out.
It's about time.
About damn time. That's what you said. And that's how we feel sometimes, right? As the public, we're like, you've been talking about this for years. How about we haven't done it? So
people forget about that. The Tenere 700 was a bike that they had in Europe for years before we got it.
They raced it in some rally raid events in Australia, like 2 years before we got it.
Don't even get me started on Yamaha not bringing bikes to America.
Yeah. Well, on the other side of the coin, perhaps, I'm not sure if that's the right analogy, I wanted to call out Ducati Monster Plus, which has been updated for 2026. I read an article written by Mr. Dustin Whelan. And I started reading this article and I'm kind of like, the take I had was like, where are we going, Ducati? Where's the Monster going anymore? It's just had this incredible journey of starting as a 900, and then there was a 750, and then there was a 620, and then there was a 1000, and then there was an 1100, and it had a liquid cooled engine, and then there was another 1100, and then had more liquid cooled engines. And it's just like the engine sizes
give the audience
have been,
an idea of what the Plus is for this bike.
The new Monster Plus.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a facelift redesign, and it now uses the same 890cc engine that's in the Street Fighter V2 and Panigale V2 and Multistrada V2, I believe. Is that right, Spurge?
That's what I'm seeing. Yes.
Okay.
So roughly 110 horsepower motorcycle.
Yeah. And Dustin goes into some detail about like how it technically is, what do you say? It's like technically lost a little bit of horsepower or, lost 2 horsepower, or like a little bit of horsepower or something like that compared to the old engine. But this Ducati's at this weird crossroads where it spent a lot of time and money clearly on this new V2 engine. And now it's being applied to every bike that it had in the lineup. And it sort of reminds me of what I just said about slicing models, Suzuki slicing those models real thin with the GSX-8. Now you've got a Street Fighter V2 and a Monster Plus with the same engine. And are the chassis different? Yeah. Is the riding position different? Probably a little bit. Do they look different? Yeah, they look different. But it's slicing it pretty thin, isn't it? Am I taking crazy pills?
Here's my take.
You're doing research, I can tell.
No, I'm using the slider. I'm using the slider on Dustin's article to see the outgoing one versus. We can actually put it up on the screen for people.
I love that feature. Yeah.
Our juxtaposed slider. Two thoughts. One, I like the look of what they're kind of going a little bit more traditional. You know, you don't have the slanted exhaust pipe. It looks a little less angular. It looks a little bit more kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say retro because that's not the right word, but it looks like it's going up maybe a little bit more towards what people think of with a Monster. You can
arguably see a little bit more of the engine.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so one of the questions that I had for Zach as we were going into this is that, like, is this a standard bike or is this a sport bike? When I think of a Monster, I think that this is a naked sport bike, right? And I think that I can argue that this is it's a standard motorcycle. You hop on, you ride it around. But that, I think, is where Ducati lost a little bit of its way along the years with the Monster. Was they made it really sporty. They had pictures of you're doing track launches on a Ducati Monster and all this other stuff. And to me, part of the appeal of the original Monster was it was just a really great sporty motorcycle to ride around on the street. Yes, there was the S4R and all that jazz from an iteration standpoint, but to your point about it losing its way, what does this want to be when it grows up? Yeah,
that's what I struggle with a little bit. It always had, or not always, most often in history, it has had some differentiation between the Street Fighter line. Street Fighter, there was Street Fighter 848, and there was
and it predated the Street Fighter line. I think that's for people that might not be
for sure,
old enough like we are, but yeah.
I mean, the Monster came out in 1993, 1994 or something like that. Yeah. Street Fighters didn't happen. Ducati Street Fighters anyway didn't happen until 2010s or something, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is, there's a little, and from a manufacturing standpoint, you can see where Ducati's coming from. They're like, we're going to spend a bunch of R&D money on this engine. We're going to apply it to a bunch of different models because it's going to be an engine that we're proud of. And I've ridden the V2 engine and I think it's a good engine. And I'm on board with it being used. But when you have more categories of motorcycle using the engine than you have engines, you're going to end up with some overlap in capability, And I guess my counterpoint to you thinking that the Monster is a sport bike is the fact that they have a Street Fighter V2. Clearly the Street Fighter V2 is the naked sport bike. And the Monster is supposed to be the more street oriented version. But I don't know. I'd be super curious to ride them back to back and be like, I'm sure they feel different, but I can't help but remember a time when it was you could get a Street Fighter 848, you could get a Monster 1200. They were just completely different.
Yeah.
There were completely different models and different.
I think that's an important delineation for people that, if you're looking at Ducati's catalog, it can be overwhelming, especially if you're trying to look at it from a historical standpoint. Cause there's been a lot of, ducks and turns and curves. And, I didn't even mean to use ducks as a play on words there, but, but I think the Street Fighter, when it was introduced, was supposed to be a bit more, it's supposed to have a bit more teeth to it, right? It was supposed to bite you a little bit harder
more
than
vicious,
what the Monster was. I can't steal your word because that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to say vicious, but that's really your thing. And I like it. I like it a lot. But no, it is, the Street Fighter was supposed to be the more aggressive version of a naked sport bike. But I mean, I don't know, man, think about when the Monster was introduced, and maybe this is my biggest problem between the Monster and the Street Fighter. The Monster was supposed to be a naked sport bike. It was playing off of that trend of people crashing sport bikes and stitching them back together without putting the fairings on and all that other stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, that's that's so long ago now, right? I mean,
but that's where the whole thing came out of.
35 years ago.
I know.
I just don't think we can apply that. Yeah, I know. I just don't think we can apply the 90s lens to the 2025 market and be like, well, you lost your way. I just think that it's, I'm curious where Ducati goes from here. Yeah.
Do they bring back the small displacement engine and that was one of the more popular monsters of all time was it the 696?
The 620, 696. There have been so many.
Yeah.
So many numbers. Well, I don't know. We'll have to wait till 2027 to find out, perhaps, Spurge. We do have one last topic here, which is electric / alternative. One last category of motorcycles, I should say. And this conversation's been quite meandering and long already, so we can't spend too much time on it. But there are a couple of things we wanted to point out that are new. I guess I'll let you decide where to start, Spurge.
I think we will quickly say Livewire is hanging on. For those of you that are not familiar, Livewire was spun off as its own brand. Originally, it was Harley-Davidson. Livewire was an electric motorcycle, and now Livewire is its own brand. They have introduced a Honcho as something we can expect, which is a small little electric mini bike. So that's something that we might see, or we're being told that we're going to see. Are you excited about a Honcho, Zach? If you could pick one thing about a Honcho that you're excited about, what is different and unique about a Honcho that could be cool?
I feel like I'm supposed to know the answer to this question, but I don't.
Swappable batteries.
Oh, swappable batteries. The swappable battery thing to me is not that exciting in the Honcho. And if you guys don't know what a Honcho is, it's basically like it's a Honda Grom-esque thing. It's a mini bike, right? Can we call it a mini bike? It's a mini bike that is electric. And I guess the swappable battery thing doesn't really light my fire in this category of bike. Like in a mini bike, I just think people are going to use it as a little bop about, and I don't think they care to swap batteries. Maybe that'll be the thing that does it, but I don't think that the glimmer of hope that I have is that it will entice people who are into electric mini stuff or electric bicycles into actually buying an electric motorcycle from a motorcycle company. Because I think that by and large, electric motorcycles that are produced by motorcycle companies are probably going to be better than electric motorcycles or electric transport that are produced by some company you've never heard of.
Flash in the pan companies.
Yeah. But I think that Livewire's got a real hill to climb.
I think the motorcycle industry in general, for EV, we're seeing the drawback of promises made even in the automotive side of, we're going to be fully electric by 2030. And, there's a lot of write-offs happening right now in the automotive side.
Ford F-150 Lightning being like, oh, just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you did, one of the things that we've talked a lot about in the podcast is, we'll believe more in, some of these EV flash in the pans when we see established brands doing it. And what we did see announced this year was Honda, for the European market so far only, we're not necessarily going to see this in the US in 2026, has announced a WN7 electric motorcycle. And Honda is arguably, an established brand kind of playing at
Did you just say that Honda is arguably an established brand?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we can argue about that another time.
You don't think they're established?
I do.
Exactly.
I think you don't need to say it's arguable. Yes. And I have been a real trumpeter of this whole thing of saying like, I don't care about your, whatever brand name you come up with, it's the new blah. And we came out with an electric motorcycle. And aren't you excited? Well, no, I'm not, because you're not Kawasaki or Honda or BMW or whatever, any number of other brands that,
what's the one that we rode for the CTXP episode where we did the beginner bike shootout?
The
Sondors. Is that still around, Zach?
No. So, I think that, I think that it's exciting. It's it can be we're a little jaded at this point with electric motorcycles. It can be a little hard to get truly excited, but it is cool that Honda is sort of like, we have a full size electric motorcycle. It's sort of like a Zero or something like that. I forget, I think it's 11 kilowatt battery, maybe. So smaller than the big offerings from Zero, but more of like a, city transport, type bike. I think they're claiming less than 100 miles of range, but, about 80 miles of range, something like that. Yeah. Anyway, point is, it's, someone had to do it. And Honda's the right company to do it. I guess I hope we get it in the States. And I don't know what else I have to say about it.
The final little electric call out here, and then we can do a fun alternative, and then move on to the engine sound guessing game. But Stark Varg is releasing a supermoto street legal version. So this is a company that originally was making off-road only electric dirt bikes, and now they're slowly expanding their line into street legal electric vehicles.
I'd like to clarify some nomenclature. I believe the company is Stark, and the Varg is the model, which was the motocross bike.
Yep.
And they're branching out in a couple of different
an SM
models, right? So now there's a Varg SM,
which is supermoto,
right? Supermoto, 17-inch wheels, street tires, headlight, taillight, blah, blah, blah. Legal to ride on the street. Pretty cool.
And I don't have much to say about this other than like, it's now a street legal variant. There's been a lot of friends that I've had that have used the off-road variant and absolutely rave about it. Love it.
And so what I'll say about this is that, what was the name of that? What was that company that went out of business? There was a Silicon Valley motorcycle company that Harley like bought and then shuttered. It was like Red Line, Red Star, Red.
No, what was it?
Spurge is going to Google it and I'm going to tell you what I think.
Go, yeah. Tell us what you think.
Yeah. See if you can find the name of that bike. I'm embarrassed that I can't remember. God, what was that called? Anyway, that company had
Alta Motors.
Alta, thank you. And it was the Alta. What was the model name? Alta Redshift. Redshift?
Yeah.
That's where I got red. Okay. There was an Alta Redshift off-road bike, and then there was an Enduro at some point, and then there was an SM. And the Alta Redshift SM was an absolute riot. It was an awesome street bike. I remember thinking, I lived in San Francisco for a few years earlier, like in my 20s. And I remember thinking if I had $1 zillion and I lived in San Francisco, I would buy an Alta Redshift SM to ride around San Francisco. It's a small city. You're not going to travel a lot of miles. It was absolutely wicked. It was silent. It was fast, wicked wheelies, wicked brakes, light. It was just a terrific bike. And I have not ridden a Stark Varg SM, but I like to think that some of that essence was captured. And if so, it's probably dynamite.
So if you had to picture a motorcycle that was a complete opposite of a Stark Varg SM, something that wasn't going to be light, wasn't going to be nimble, wasn't going to wheelie,
right?
Wasn't going to be, well, I mean, it could be fun to ride. Cause you can, take the whole family. What final wacky pick do we think that we're going to maybe be excited to see or ride in 2026?
We're burying the lead here, everybody. The most exciting news of 2026, obviously, is the Ural Neo. If you're not familiar with Ural, Ural is essentially a Russian company that has started making World War II knockoff sidecars a long time ago and has since moved to Kazakhstan and continues to build Russian knockoff sidecars. And you're probably familiar with a Ural Gear Up or one of those sort of wacky World War II looking Indiana Jones style sidecars. In 2026, Ural is coming out with a new model, a new motorcycle. It's a new engine, new platform, same sidecar. Well, I mean, literally the same sidecar, but it has a sidecar on it. And it's kind of interesting. Like it's not a retro looking bike. It's a liquid cooled parallel twin made in China, I think. Right.
Yeah. I think that's where a lot of the commentary has been around like, oh, it's Chinese now. And I think Zach and I were talking about this. And I think Zach, you made the point of like, wait a second. Like, it wasn't like these things were a pillar of reliability and engineering to begin with. Like, are we really going to knock it for being produced in China versus Kazakhstan?
Kazakhstan, like the Kazakhstani motorcycle. That was the one that you were like, yeah, hey, you don't mess with my Kazakh built motorcycles. I don't know if anyone. Yeah. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. I'm excited.
Spencer Robert just bought an older Ural, and he was talking about the problem with like parts availability and everything are an issue right now.
Well, but maybe perhaps being made in China will make parts availability less of an issue. Spencer was initially the one that brought up this whole point of like, are you really going to get indignant about your Kazakhstani motorcycle when it comes to, reliability and, I don't know, sort of like, noteworthy brand recognition. I don't know. I guess one thing you can say about the Kazakh built Ural is that while not Russia, it is close to Russia and like it still maintains the spirit of Russia in some ways. Straight up building a liquid cooled parallel twin in China is a little bit less charming, you might say, but I'll still be excited to ride it. I'm, me, Spurjo, I'm a sidecar guy. I'll be interested to try it and, report back when I do.
Well, I think we have talked about everything that we could possibly be excited about so far in 2026.
Until we get all your emails.
But I think it is time that we fire up the engines on the old engine sound guessing game. Do you have any objections of me firing up the engines, Zachary?
Fire it up, buddy.
Well,
wait, hang on. Well, first we got to fire up that sponsor. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Kropovich is the sponsor of the Engine Sound Guessing Game. And Kropovich makes premium exhausts for your premium motorcycle. Whether it was built in 2025, 2026, or some other model year, chances are Kropovich has an exhaust to make your motorcycle sound better. And we would just want to take a second and say thank you for sponsoring the Engine Sound Guessing Game.
Indeed.
You can play along at home. Zach and I are going to crank up the engine sound. We have not heard it, either he or I. And we are going to be competing against each other, but we're also competing against you. So if you think you know the engine sound, shout it out.
All right, everybody, without further ado, let's have a listen. No shut off noise. I don't know why, but I kind of like a shut off noise. This one we had a fade out. I'm making excuses already. Do you like it?
Would you say that engine sounds vicious?
Well, here's a question, Spurge, because you and I had an argument about what's a sport bike and what's a standard bike. Would you say this is a sport bike or a standard bike?
I would say it was a sport bike.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it sounds a little bit vicious. It's quick to rev. As usual, we'll go with number of cylinders first. How many cylinders are you hearing?
I don't want to answer that question.
Okie dokie. Would you like me to answer it?
I think it's 4, but it could also be 2. And that's where I'm.
I'll give you a hint. I think it's neither 2 nor 4.
You think it's a triple?
I do.
Really?
Yes.
That was the one I was going to say. I'm almost positive it's not a triple.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Remember last, yeah, I don't remember. I could count on, I would need many hands to count the mistakes I've made in the Engine Sound Guessing Game. Anyway, I think it's a triple, and I think it's a mid-size triple, somewhere between 660 and 800 cc's.
You think it's a Triumph triple?
I do.
Really? I didn't get that at all.
But it could be I think it's Triumph or Yamaha. And this is the thing.
Well, you're kind of like,
I know. It's hard
to
the
category on who makes
triple.
triple. Who else makes a triple though? MV Agusta?
Right.
Like, so what do you just name it? I think it's one of any of the triples that are on the market right now is what you're saying.
Or a Laverda.
We played that game before.
We did. Yeah. Okay. So, now that you mentioned it, it could be an MV Agusta. Let's get a hint, shall we? I think it has 3 cylinders.
Let's get a hint and listen again, because I didn't.
Okay.
I was going to say I do not think it's 3 cylinders, but I am, as always, wrong. First hint is that it is a triple. So I did not hear that at all. So if anybody outside this studio is playing the game at home and you feel a little bit let down too, you're not alone. I would have never guessed triple on that one.
Okay. Well, I guess I don't really know what I'm listening for, but let's take one more listen to it and see if we can glean anything from the sound to try to determine who makes this bike.
You know, I hear it now. I know. Now I'm just like,
now it's all you can hear.
It sounds to me. It sounds to me like, I'm just gonna make bold claims at this point because I was pretty sure it wasn't triple. I would say it's probably like the 765. Like it sounds more like the new one than like the old 675. Or do you think it sounds more like the old 675? I don't know.
I think it's a Yamaha.
You think it's a Yamaha? We've gotten screwed by this in the past.
We have, and I don't know what to say except that I'm not very good at this. And the starter motor, I think I'm hearing Yamaha, and I feel like the Triumphs often have this sort of water pump whistle. At least that's what a Triumph engineer told me it was one time. They had this sort of like RPM related kind of like a little whistle, like the engine kind of has this high pitched whine or a whistle and I'm not really hearing that here. And I feel like starter motor sounds like Yamaha to me.
It doesn't sound like a Yamaha. I don't think it sounds like a Yamaha.
All right. Well,
I agree with you
right,
that
going to be wrong.
Maybe. And again, I don't want to go back and listen again, but I don't remember hearing the starter motor whistle, but like, I don't know. Doesn't sound like a Yamaha.
Okay.
All right. Final hint. Well, I'm wrong again. But on a positive note, I think you are too. The final hint is 798 cc's. That's not a Triumph. And it's not a Yamaha. The Yamaha is not a 798 cc triple.
The 800, the new 800 cc Triumph is a 798, I think. Like the Tiger Sport 800.
Really?
I think it might be a 798.
Yeah, but I don't know. But how is producer Chase going to have an audio clip of that unless he got like that bike's not? No, I guess that bike's on the street.
Tiger Sport 800. Yeah, I rode that last year.
Yeah.
So it could be that. It could be an MV Agusta. Is it an MV Agusta?
I don't know. I would. Can we check the facts on?
No, don't look anything up. That's the whole. You can't. You're not allowed to do research.
I just meant
mid Scrabble game.
I'm sorry. Okay.
If we're both wrong, we're both wrong. I thought it was a Yamaha, and I'm wrong because the Yamaha was the MT-09 was an 847 and is now an 890, and the Triumph Street Triple 765 is of course a 765. Is this? I think 765.
And used
the
to be
old
the
675s or 675s.
Yep.
The Tridents are 660s or 800s, which that leaves the 800 triple. So.
Let's move on to the end. Do you have a final? Do you want to make a stand? Do you want to take a final guess?
Tigers Sport 800, or it's an MV Agusta. I don't know. I guess I'm way off. I thought it was Yamaha. I couldn't be further from the truth.
The answer is a 2018 MV Agusta Brutale RR. Mm-hmm. So, want to give a shout out to Frank. Frank, thank you for sending us a sound clip of your stock 2018 MV Agusta Brutale RR. Mm-hmm. He warmed up.
You win and a Krapovich pipe. Just kidding. You don't. You just win a t-shirt.
He let us know that he warmed up the engine so that he'd be able to hit the rev limiter for us.
Okay, that's good. Well, I appreciate that.
Zach would have appreciated it more if you would have gotten an audio clip of the engine turning off. It sounds like.
Well, burned yet again by my own genius idea of trying to guess engine sounds. I thought I was onto something, and bad news, Frank. Your MV Agusta sounds like a Yamaha when it starts up.
Well,
but it doesn't look like a Yamaha or feel like a Yamaha.
The Brutale RR has the crazy spoke wheels on it. He actually sent a picture in too. Maybe we'll throw it up on the screen. Frank, thank you for playing. Remember, you too can play the engine sound guessing game. If you want to send us an audio clip of your engine sound, we need a clip of the bike starting up, let it idle for a little bit, give it a couple of really good revs, let it idle for a little bit, turn it off. Zach wants to hear the bike shutting down as well as starting up. Frank, we will send you a t-shirt. You need to send us an email with your preferred shirt size, Highside, Lowside shirt design, and the address where you would like us to send your shirt to.
Thanks again, Frank, for making me look dumb. All right, Spurjo.
I mean, you got it was a triple right away. So like, I'm going to give you some credit there.
Okay.
Like I did not hear.
Right. No. Okay. That's enough engine sound guessing. Spurjo, let's move on to the Highside, Lowside comment. The Highside, Lowside comment this time comes in from Austin via email. If your name is Austin, I hope you're getting excited. As a reminder, you can win a t-shirt just like Austin just did by sending us an email or leaving us a review. More on that later. Austin's comment via email goes like this, Spurjo. I wanted to bring to your attention something announced at EICMA this year that wasn't mentioned in the podcast. It looks like Cardo, and possibly another company if I remember correctly, have come out with some noise canceling helmets. This is a big deal. It could, in theory, mean the end of needing to wear earplugs and or earbuds while riding. I work at one of the companies that designs and manufactures active noise canceling or ANC systems for automotive manufacturers. This system uses small microphones in the vehicle cabin that pick up unwanted outside sounds and then generates an opposite sound wave through the speaker system of the vehicle to cancel out road and engine noise. It is used in many newer vehicles. Similar technology is used in noise canceling headphones as well. I'm excited to see this technology come to the motorcycling world because I hate wearing earplugs when I ride and I often will not use them for a short ride. Here's hoping that this technology becomes more common in motorcycle helmets. Signed, Austin.
Well, Austin, you are correct. The other helmet manufacturer you could be thinking of was Sina, but Cardo is launching a noise canceling motorcycle helmet. They announced it at EICMA. It was recently shown at AIM, and we are joined by our product expert, Pat McHugh, who was at EICMA, who was at AIM, and who has seen this helmet in person. Pat, welcome to the podcast. And we're looking forward to getting a little bit of a download from you for Austin as to what you think and what you can tell us about this new Cardo helmet.
Yeah, it's been super cool, and I love seeing when customers are actively like reaching out, asking about gear, because I am also a gear geek. So it's cool to hear something not about bikes from you guys, and more about something in the advancements that we're seeing. But yeah, Cardo's new helmet, there's going to be two of them, a GTS, and I believe just a GT, like a top model and a lower model. But they are introducing ANC or active noise cancellation. So it should be a pretty revolutionary thing for us riders moving forward. As they indicated, not really something that is new to the industry. Sen has kind of had something out there, more so in the communication side of it. So it'll actually mute a lot of the noise in the background when it comes to the communication from rider to rider, but still super cool to see them moving forward. And Cardo now introducing something for active noise and road noise cancellation, to be more specific.
And what were some of the, in addition to that specific feature, what were some of the other technologies that we're seeing from Cardo that's going to set this helmet apart from what we've seen from competitors out there?
Yeah, they're actually going to be using the. I did, as you said, got to check it out and actually wear it at AIM this past week. So they will introduce 53 millimeter speakers inside the helmet, which is really going to play towards the active noise cancellation. So 53 millimeter speakers are the biggest we've seen thus far inside of a helmet. Updatable hardware built into it, so you can actually swap out hardware if they come up with new technology, introduce it in there. There's going to be a tail light built into it that works on accelerometers we've seen from other companies like Break Free, and a full carbon fiber lid. So it's really cool how advanced they're going, not just introducing like a $400 or $500 helmet that kind of does it. They're throwing everything they have from a technology side of it at this new GTS coming out.
What is the price point? Do we know?
In the US, it's probably looking at about $1,200 for their first attempt. For their top of the line, the GTS, and I think the step down would be about $1,000. And that was really to bring the price down, but it's going to lose a couple of the features. I think the battery is about half as big as the bigger one, as well as a few other features will be pulled back, including the shell won't be carbon fiber, will probably be fiberglass.
And some of the other for the premium one, you were mentioning this in pre-production when we were talking about it. Some of the things that I thought were interesting, you mentioned the brake light being built into it, but also like kind of like, is it like life of the helmet or crash detection technology where if you drop your helmet, it can tell you, hey, your helmet is no longer safe to wear. Like what are they working on with some of that stuff?
Yeah, so we saw them introduce that with the Pack Talk Pro crash detection, which was a big thing about a year ago. A lot of brands were introducing it, especially on the dirt side of it, trying to introduce that technology in there. It's definitely clever. It really tells you if there's enough G-forces that the helmet might be compromised. It'll send you a notification like you should probably get the helmet checked out just to make sure. But it's crash detection, so it likely can. We'll see what the technology actually rolls out with. It'll likely notify someone that you put in your emergency contact list that the crash has been detected. You might want to reach out to this person just to make sure that they're okay. So a lot of features going into it, a lot of things that we're seeing Cardo really toss into this helmet for the price point, which makes sense. You want all the premium features, but also just creature comforts for riders.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. What I'll say to kind of play devil's advocate here, and maybe you can correct some of these conceptions that I have, or, illustrate why my conceptions are misconceptions. Historically, when a company that doesn't make helmets comes out with a helmet, it's not very good. There have been lots of attempts at smart helmets, at heads-up display technology, at integrated speakers. It's when you put the helmets on, you're just like, this isn't good. It doesn't feel like in a ride. It doesn't feel like a Shoei. It doesn't feel like an HJC. It doesn't feel like, a helmet from a brand that makes helmets. And so as a motorcyclist, I'm suspicious of it because I think years ago, didn't Senna come out with a helmet? To be fair, this was a price point helmet. It was priced much more aggressively than this. But it felt like it, and it didn't feel good. And I didn't put it on and think, nice, I'm going to wear this. I thought, no, I'm not interested in this. So why is this different, or why is it different?
Wait, Pat, before you answer, is there a manufacturer in recent years that has never manufactured a helmet before and then came out with a helmet that you, Pat McHugh, loved and became one of our favorite helmets of the year?
Yeah, I mean, Alpinestars is the best example of what you can do from someone who doesn't design helmets to a company that is now leading every single category in the helmets that they produce in there. So
I thought you were going to say Leatt, because Leatt is not historically a helmet maker, and that's like a pretty good helmet. You guys like that one, don't you?
But yeah, Alpinestars is the most recent one that is branched into the helmets, and they've really just done an amazing job with it.
Yeah, I love. For a few years there at EICMA, every brand that didn't make helmets was like, we can make helmets now. And they would just go to a third party, give them an idea. And we jokingly refer to it as a la carte. Oh, you have this face shield. Oh, you have this vent. Can I piece it together and make this helmet? Alpinestars did it right. Leatt did it right with their ADV lines. They redesigned everything in-house. They might have used external manufacturing, but it was all their proprietary information. Cardo's doing the same thing. Everything about this helmet is theirs. That they've taken to it, whereas we've seen it from Senna has tons of helmets out there, and including the one I mentioned before, which uses AINR, which is an AI system for noise reduction. So not quite ANC, but getting closer and maybe a firmware update away from doing something like that, using the microphone to listen for road noise and then canceling it out. But what Cardo's doing is really just throwing everything they have technology wise at it. So I'm the same way as you. It was cool in person. I didn't get to ride with it out on the road. They had a boombox playing road noise, and they'd turn it on, turn it off to show you the difference. To the original commenter's kind of point of view, I'd still probably wear earplugs on it just because when your ears start to go, it's not like a steady, gradual, you're starting to lose your hearing. It's usually a cliff and it falls off. So I'm trying to avoid wherever that cliff is in the future as much as I can.
It also doesn't heal. Is something that I believe I've learned about hearing damage, is that it doesn't get better. It just only gets worse.
That's my way of looking at it. Is I'd probably still wear them as a safety point of view, but I don't have problems with it. I will say, having tried on that helmet at the shows, you can definitely feel how close they had to put the speakers to your head. So it is a narrow fit from what we've seen right out of the gate. Whether they change that before they launch, and I think they're launching mid this year in the US. Whether they change that remains to be seen. But it's that's part of the technology is you want whatever's stopping the noise to be as close to your ears as possible to help reduce it just with a physical design more so than the technology. So we'll see. Only time will tell.
I think with that, Austin, hopefully it gives you your answer. I know that there are some rumors that I heard that Cena's going to be making some updates as well. So, who knows what 2026 has in store for this particular technology. But, one thing is certain is that it's definitely moving pretty fast. And Pat, just want to take a second and say thank you for joining us to keep us up to date on some of the newest changes that you're seeing out there at these shows.
Yeah. Happy to join, fellas.
Later, Pat. See you soon.
Well, I didn't realize we're going to talk about hearing loss because Zach and I haven't had a chance to catch up off screen lately, but I've been dealing with a hearing issue in my left ear, and I never knew that hearing just falls off a cliff. And I woke up one day and had lost pretty much half of the hearing in my left ear, and have been going to all kinds of doctors to try and figure out what's going on. And at one point, one of the doctors was like, "Well, this just might be permanent." And I'm like, "That's insane. Why? How? Why?" And
That's brutal.
Yeah. And you're just like, "No, this is just what it is now."
Well,
crazy.
I hope that answers your question, Austin. Obviously, Pat had a lot more information than we did. It's glad we brought him on. He's a wealth of knowledge as always. And I guess I'm encouraged. I don't know. I'm still skeptical, but I guess cautiously excited about the idea that a company that doesn't make helmets would break ground in the helmet game, because, sometimes that's what it takes. It takes a lot of, especially in the motorcycling industry, companies can get hung up on what they've always done and not branching out and not rocking the boat and so on and so forth. And if a company can come up with a product that is genuinely different and new and innovative and works and is good, then I guess I'm open to it. I like noise canceling technology in general. I think it's cool.
I think the helmet industry, especially, man, like you look at 10 or 15 years ago and it was like Arai versus Shoei. And I mean, over the last, 5, 6, 7 years, you've had Bell, you've had Leatt, you've had Alpine Stars, you've had Scorpion. Like there's some really 6D, like you've had some really great helmet manufacturers come out of non-traditional, lanes. And I think it's really cool to see this particular segment continue to evolve. But Austin, keep your eyes peeled. It sounds like 2026 is the year you're going to see some new helmets come out that feature this audio canceling, noise canceling audio technology. And
as a reminder to all of you out there, you can send us an email to Highside, Lowside at RevZilla.com with a question or comment. You can submit a comment or leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify. You can also leave a review on the Apple Podcast platform. And if your comment/question is selected, you win a t-shirt, just like Austin just did. So Austin, please, friendly reminder to send your preferred t-shirt design, size, and mailing address to highside at RevZilla.com, and we'll get you some swag.
Zach, out of all the things we've discussed today, what's the thing that you are most excited about for 2026?
My big takeaway for 2026, huh, Spurge? I'm going to scroll up in the document. Just give me a second here. Well, it's not robots, that's for sure. That seems like that went haywire right off the bat. I don't know. Like, what am I most excited about? It's hard.
What about a robot motorcycle?
To say. I don't know. I can't help but be excited about some of the stuff that would theoretically be quite good for daily rider, that Rebel 300E clutch, the Suzuki SV7 GX, the bikes that are sort of practical. I really, what my big takeaway here is, Spurge, is that I was a real grump about that KLE 500, and I appreciate your optimism, and I hope that I am proven wrong. I guess that's what I would say. What about you? What's your big takeaway from the episode this time?
My big takeaway is that for the end of 2025, I made the Spencer Robert family holiday Christmas card list. And if Zach, I'm assuming you've probably made this list in the past. We talked about alternative motorcycles at the very end of this. We talked about a new looking Ural, but Spencer was on the podcast earlier this year and he was pontificating about a Ural versus a live wire and what you should get for his wedding. And Spencer doesn't listen to the podcast, so he's never going to know that I did this. But I'm going to share just the Robert family holiday card this year.
It's
featured.
lovely.
What is it featuring, Zach?
Well, it is featuring Spencer, his lovely wife, his brother, sister-in-law, 2 nieces, mother, father, and of course, a Ural sidecar.
Look at that. A Ural sidecar. So not only did it make an appearance for the wedding, but it also kept us happy in the holidays with a warm well wish. So I'm hoping that I make the holiday card for 2026, despite the fact that I'm airing their holiday cards all over the internet. And
Exactly. You might be off the list now.
I wonder what motorcycle they'll feature next year.
Indeed. So. All right. Well, as usual, I'm sure we missed something. So if and when you
make it to the end of this diatribe of a podcast,
if and when you are hoarse from yelling at the sky about how did we possibly miss the motorcycle that we missed, send us an email and remind us, and we'll try to bring it up if it makes any sense. In the meantime, Spurjo, we got some fun podcast ideas coming up for the rest of the season. I'm looking forward to that, but I suppose we should let the ladies and gentlemen go right now, huh?
Let them go, and we will see you next time on Highside, Lowside.